Hello and welcome to another video. This is probably going to be a long one, so grab a drink, grab a snack, and strap in because we're going to be here for a while. I don't know what happened in April, but I was a reading machine. I could not be stopped, and I read a lot. So we'll get right into it. We'll start with our stats. So in April, I read a total of 22 books and only DNF'd 2, which is really nice for me for a change. I normally DNF a lot more than that, which was a total of 6,947 pages. I'm really mad that it was so close to 7,000. Like, come on. And a total of 79 hours of audiobooks, making this by far my best month of the year. My second best in terms of page number was January with just shy of 6,000, so I read a whole extra 1,000 pages this month. So for the DNFs, the first one was Extinction. This was the April pick for the in-person book club that I'm part of. I did not get far into this book. I think I read maybe like 15 pages total, and it was a rough time. So swift DNF for that one. My issue with this one was that it is a female main character written by a man, and that was extremely obvious. Largely in the fact that all of the male characters who were introduced by their title, their job, their accomplishments, that kind of thing. Whereas the small handful of female characters were introduced by their age and their insecurities, talking about their wrinkles and their makeup and their clothes. So that was a swift no for me. I'll pass on that. Thank you very much. And it seems like the rest of my book club also did not enjoy this book. A couple of them did, but most did not, from what I heard. I didn't even go to the meeting because I was just like, I don't want to talk about this book. And the other DNF was Little Rot by Akwaeke and Emezi. Unfortunately, I love this author, but I could not do this book. I tried, I really did. I was trying to push myself out of my comfort zone, and because I love this author so much, I figured that would be a pretty good place to try and get out of my comfort zone and try something new, and I just could not do it. This is a pretty dark book in ways that I didn't expect. Like, I read the synopsis and knew that there was going to be some pretty fucked up things happening, but the kind of fucked up things were not things that I could personally handle, so I DNF'd that one. Moving on to the books that I did read, I'll start with the challenges. So with Backless Bash, I only read 4 books for Backless Bash this month, but that is okay. It's still something. I'll take it. The first one for that was Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I'm so happy that I finally read this book. I adore this author. I think this was my 4th book that I read by him, and honestly, it was probably my least favorite from him, but I still gave it a 4.5 star, which tells you a lot by how much I enjoy this author. This one was so sweet and heartwarming and bittersweet. I picked up this book because I was really in the mood to cry, and it did indeed do it. I cried real hard reading this book. It made me bawl my eyes out. This one's about a middle-aged man who very suddenly passes away, and it's about his afterlife, where he is a ghost and he is brought to the kind of halfway point where he's trying to move on, and the very sweet ferryman and his little family at his tea shop that he runs, and things go from there. And it was lovely, and I so enjoyed this book. It was phenomenal, and I can't wait to read even more from this author going forward. I want to read his entire backlist at some point. But yeah, happy to have read this one. Also, I found this book at a thrift store for $1.50. I love that, and it's in perfect condition. Wonderful. I read Empire Sand by Tasha Suri, which I gave a 4 star. This one is a fantasy romance inspired by Indian mythology, and it was fantastic. Oh man, it was really good. I love a fantasy set in a desert. I think that's so much fun. And it had a really cool magic system that was based on gods. I think they were dream gods, and they were really angry, and their anger manifested as these nightmare demon creatures. It's cool as fuck. This was such a good book. I liked the romance for the most part. I did find that it was really dramatic a lot of the time. Just the way that they would speak and kind of get all breathy and stuff was a little bit much at times, but for the most part it was really good. I especially loved their discussions of consent and boundaries and how both of those things were important to both of the characters. It wasn't just about her comfort, it was about both of their comforts, which was lovely to see. The Strangeworld's Travel Agency is a middle grade portal fantasy about this, I think, 12-year-old girl who just moved into a new city, and she stumbles across the Strangeworld's Travel Agency, which is a travel agency to different worlds. This was such a fun book. I really enjoyed it. I love portal fantasies, so I figured that I would, but I don't love middle grade because kids are annoying as fuck. But I ended up loving this one. The different worlds were so fun. I loved the characters and the friendship that bloomed. I just thought it was such a good time. It didn't go as in-depth as I would have personally liked it, which is also why I'm not a huge fan of middle grade. I love the whimsy and the fun nature of them, but I want a bit more out of them, so I ended up giving it a 3.5 star, but I'll definitely carry on with the series. I think if you're a fan of the Up and Under series, the spin-off for Middle Game, as well well as the Wayward Children series, then you would really enjoy this book as well. And then finally for Backlist Bashed was The Archived by VE Schwab. This is a bind up of both books, so I only read about half of it. I also gave this a 3.5 star. It was good in some ways. I really enjoyed the magic system and the world of it. This one's about a teenage girl who is a keeper, I think they're called. She has a key that allows her to get into the Narrows, which is the space between life and death, kind of, sort of, not really, but almost. And that is where ghosts who have escaped the archive, which is where souls are stored. When they escape there, they end up in the Narrows, and the keepers are in charge of returning them to the archives. It's almost like their library books. It's very interesting. So I loved the world of it. I loved the magic. It was really interesting. My issue with this book is mainly just the time period that it was published in. It is extremely 2013 in a couple ways, but mainly the main character's friend that she meets, he wears all black and has kind of emo hair and wears eyeliner, and the fact that he wears eyeliner is a continuous point of conversation for some reason. And there's a side character who is plus size and she's described as being obese every single time that she's on page, and it's just those little things that are just kind of judgmental. That was very much how things were back in 2013. I was in high school when this book was published, and that was very much the vibe. Anyone who was plus sized or alternative in any way was judged so harshly, and that was apparent in this book. And that really took down my enjoyment of it and just really didn't feel like it was needed. But other than that, this was a pretty good book. I will finish the series at least, but it was definitely my least favorite of VE Schwab's books. The Buzzword challenges this month had to do with animals. So for the covers challenge, it was to read a book with an animal on the cover, and I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Tony, you are being so cute. Oh my god, you're adorable. This is the second prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy, as I'm sure everybody is well aware of. This was fantastic. Oh my god, it was so good. This is Haymitch's story, who was probably my favorite character in the original trilogy. I love a grumpy old man character, and him in the original trilogy is just perfection. I was so scared that this book was going to flop because the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes was not a good book. But luckily this one was amazing and I had a great time with it. I gave it a 4.5 star. It was almost 5 stars, but it did take me quite a bit to get into the story. I didn't get fully invested until maybe like 30% of it, but once I was in it, I was in it. And I do wish that the part that took place in the arena was more in depth, not more gruesome, just more detailed in some ways. I wanted to know more about like where they were and what things looked like and that kind of thing, and more about the thoughts of the characters and their feelings and all that stuff, because it's the kind of more psychological part of being in the arena is what's really interesting to me, as well as the political side of things. I really wanted just a little bit more of that as well. And then the regular Buzzword challenge was a book with a animal in the title, which I read The Dead Cattail Assassins by Djéli Clark for. This was also an amazing book. I gave it a solid 4 star. It was a lot funnier than I thought it was going to be. I wasn't expecting humor, and I am not mad about it. I think the humor is what really made this book for me. The two main characters are very sarcastic and dry, and they were a riot to follow. I love that kind of character. It almost always works really well for me. And this author, of course, amazing. I love Djéli Clark so much. I think he's such a talented writer, and this one did not disappoint. I don't have too much to say about it. As much as I really enjoyed it, I don't think it'll stick with me for a long time, which is why it's a 4 star, not a 4.5 or a 5, but it was still a fantastic read, and I definitely recommend for a fun, quick, bloody time. And then I had a whole bunch of those little like Goodreads challenges left over, the community challenges. You don't win anything, but you just get like a little bookmark is unlocked. You don't actually get a bookmark, it's just an icon of a bookmark. But I like that they do those, so I wanted to do all of them. And at the start of the year, I was like, oh, I have like 4 months to do it, no problem. And then April came along and I was like, shit, I've done 1. I have 5 more to do. So I did them. So for the Epic Quest challenge, I also used Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. For Era Explorer, I read The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. I've had this book on my shelf for years. So many years. And honestly, if not for this challenge, I probably never would have read it. I got this book because my friend was unhauling it, and honestly, I liked the cover, and that was really it. But I had zero interest in the premise of it. And while this wasn't the best book that I've ever read, it was still a good time. I did actually quite enjoy it. I read it all in one day and had a pretty good time with it. This one's a dual timeline historical fiction about a woman in the present timeline who's on a trip in England. She's a historian, and she finds this little like empty vial of poison and decides to try and find the story behind it. And the other timeline is the story of where that vial came from, which came from a apothecary run by this woman who sold poisons to women who were being abused and mistreated by the men in their lives. I gave it a 3.5 star. The story itself is a 4 easily. I really enjoy the dual timeline. Dual timeline is often often pretty iffy for me. It can be done poorly very easily, but this one was done really, really well, where I was actually invested in both timelines. I was more interested in the past timeline, but the present timeline also held my interest quite well. But my enjoyment definitely lowered with the constant and really weird obsession with pregnancy in this book. Every single character was either wondering if she was pregnant or talking about being pregnant in the past or wanting to be pregnant, and it wasn't like once in a while, it was literally every couple of pages it was being brought up. It was a little excessive, and it didn't really feel like it was needed to that level, you know what I mean? To the point where it was just really odd and it really stuck out. So that definitely lowered my enjoyment, but overall it was still a pretty solid read. For the sweet and spicy challenge, I read Lost and Lassoed. This one was also not on my TBR. I had zero interest in reading it. I find cowboys to be aesthetically pleasing. They are very attractive, but I'm really not interested in that entire genre of things. Just as a whole, I don't like country music. I'm a very queer alternative kind of person, which is kind of the opposite of what cowboys generally are. At least my idea of cowboys is very kind of conservative with like traditional family values sort of thing. That is not my vibe whatsoever. But there was nothing else on that list that was even kind of interesting to me, so I figured I would give it a shot, and I ended up loving this book. I gave it a full 5 stars. It made me pull my eyes out. It was so good. It's the third book in the, I keep forgetting what it's called. Blue Rebel or Rebel Blue or Blue Ranch or something like that. I'm not sure what it's called, but that series. They're a companion book, so they don't have to be read in order. And honestly, I'm really glad that I read book 3 first. I did read the first books in the series later in the month, and had I started with book 1, I wouldn't have continued, but book 3 was so good that I immediately read books 1 and 2. This one was such a fun time. I loved the characters in it. Hate to love is a trope that can work really well for me, or it could be the absolute worst thing that I've ever read. It's really hard to get that trope right for me, but when it's done right, I love it so much. And this one was done perfectly because the reason why they didn't like each other actually made sense, and they actually communicated to resolve things, which is what usually drives me nuts about that trope, is the lack of communication. But this one was done so well. I loved every second of it, and like I mentioned, I went right into books 1 and 2 in the series, which I'll just mention real quick here just to get them out of the way. So Done and Dusted, I gave a 4-star to, and Swift and Saddled, I gave a 4.5. Book 1 was good. I really enjoyed it. I probably wouldn't have carried on with the series though. It was still good and like well written and everything, but it was just pretty basic for me, so I definitely wouldn't have carried on. Book 2 was better. I liked the characters a bit more in that one, and the overarching plot of it was a bit better for me. But overall, so far the series has been fantastic. I'm really happy to be reading it. I have 1 book left and I can't wait to get it. I'm really hoping to read it in May. I just can't get enough of these books, and now I want to read a whole bunch of cowboy romances, which I never thought that I would say. Back to the Goodreads challenges. The last one was the Her Story challenge, and I read What My Bones Know. This one was a memoir about surviving CPTSD, and oh boy, this was intense. It was a very tough read. Well worth it. It was fantastic, but the author did not shy away from sharing the gruesome details of her childhood. I really appreciated this book because she really dove into how hard it is to heal from that. I read this book partially for the challenge, but also my therapist told me to read it a very long time ago, and I just didn't get around to it. So this gave me a reason to finally read it, and I'm very glad that I did because I loved the way that she talked about healing and how hard it is and how it is not a straight line. She kind of had periods where she would do better, and then all of a sudden she'd go right back to where she was before, and how frustrating that is and difficult it is, and how easy it would be to just give up and just be this miserable person for the rest of your life, and how every single day is work. You have to work at it every single day. You don't get to take breaks. It was such a fantastic, informative read. I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed is the wrong word, but you know what I mean. And yeah, I definitely recommend this book. If you can handle it, definitely look up trigger warnings first, because again, it is very, very graphic, especially in the beginning of it. And then finally, for the challenges and book club reads, the one book club book that I did read this month was I Got Abducted by Aliens and Now I'm Trapped in a Rom-Com by Kimberly Lemming. This was for Cozy Quill. The title kind of sums up what it's about. This was ridiculous. It was such a stupid book and I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4-star. It was just such a fun time. There's very little plot to this. Like there is some plot, but the plot is not the point. So this one is about this woman, I can't think of the job title, but her job is to study animals basically, and she is traveling about and she is just about to get attacked by a lion when her and the lion both get abducted by aliens, and they're dropped off on this random planet where she now has these 2 giant alien dudes who are in love with her, and the lion can talk, and I don't know, it was it was So dumb. I loved it. It was so stupid. I read that other series from this author, the I got drunk and did whatever with a demon series. I can't think of what it's called, but that one. This one is very similar to that series in terms of the tone of it, except it's way stupider, if that was possible. And I don't mean stupid as an insult. This is fantastic. It is meant to be stupid. So it's very much doing what it set out to do, and it did that very well. And the rest of the books for this month were not read for any reason. They were just because I wanted to. So I'll just go in order of when I read them in, starting with Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. First of all, look at this edition. It's stunning, and the naked hardback is even more beautiful. Like, come on. That is so pretty. And then the art style is also gorgeous. It's so vibrant and colorful and just absolutely stunning. Unfortunately, I did not love this book. I gave it a 2.5 star. I liked parts of the story, but I found it to be really confusing. It said book 1, so I figured that this would be a good place to start with the Swamp Thing world, and I feel like I'm missing so much context. There has to be a bunch more to this world that I was not aware of. This really didn't make much sense to me personally. I found the characters to be pretty bland and the stories to be kind of one note personally, but the art, stunning. Next up was the Martian Contingency. This is the 4th book in the Lady Astronaut series, which I absolutely adore. I love these books so much. They're so much fun. Oh, hang on, it's getting kind of dark in here. Let me put a lamp on. Is that better? It's a bit better. It's good enough. So yeah, this series takes place in an alternate history where in like, I think in the 1960s or something like that, a meteorite strikes Earth and the main character and her husband are both scientists who realize that it's going to cause a global warming effect that will kill off the planet eventually. So they start basically a space race to try and colonize the moon. And of course there's a whole bunch of pushback, people don't believe them, and it's just kind of about her life as this woman in science trying to be taken seriously in the 1960s. It's a fantastic series. They are really interesting. It's high stakes but has kind of cozy vibes in a way, and while the sci-fi elements are really interesting and a huge part of this book, it's also a lot about the characters and the friendships and relationships that are born from it as well. I gave this book a 4.5 star. I read it pretty much immediately after it came out. I like dropped whatever else I was reading and picked it up almost right away. Definitely recommend this series if you haven't already read them. Next up, I read A Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch by Sarah Hawley. This is the 2nd book in the Glimmer Falls series, I think it's called, which are contemporary paranormal romances. I love these books so much. I think they're so fun. I love the genre as a whole. There have been so many of these contemporary like paranormal rom-coms over the years that I've read, and I've loved pretty much every single one of them. It's definitely something that really works for me, and this one is honestly some of the best that I've read. They're definitely high contenders for a favorite in this subgenre. This book follows 2 side characters from book 1 who absolutely hate each other, and for very good reason this time. The male love interest is the villain from the 1st book, except he now has amnesia, and the best friend of the person from the 1st book, who hates his guts for some reason, decides to help him because she feels bad for him that he has no idea who he is or what he's done in the past. So she helps him find the witch in the woods to try and get back his memories. And of course they fall in love along the way. I absolutely love these 2 together. The female main character she's a personal trainer, she's very strong and loves to fight, and fights a little bit too often, and it gets her into some trouble quite a lot. And I love how he's able to keep up with her in terms of her kind of fighty nature. The 2 of them spend the entire book just going at each other constantly. They are always arguing and bickering and insulting each other, but they always have this level of respect for each other and they don't cross boundaries. And yeah, overall it was a fantastic book. I had a great time with it, and I gave it a 4 star. Sweep With Me is book 4.5 in the Innkeeper Chronicles series, and I loved this one as well. It was fantastic. I gave it a 4 star. It would have been a little bit higher if it was a bit longer, I think. This was a novella, and it definitely would have benefited from being a full-length novel, or at least a bit of a longer novella would have been nice. I kind of see like 0.5 books as generally just being like short stories or little moments in the characters' lives that don't really matter to the plot. But because the series is how it is, where each book is kind of episodic, this just felt like a regular installment in the series, so I didn't think that it needed to be a 0.5 book, and could have been full length and been just as good, or actually even better. But I still had a great time with it. It was such a fun time. It was so stupid. There were these like sentient space chickens, and it was ridiculous and such a good time. I love this series so much, and I can't wait to finish it out, hopefully this month. Starting to lose daylight, so I'm gonna try and go a little bit faster here. Next up was Half a Soul by, who is it, Olivia Atwater. This one is a Regency fairy tale and romance, and I liked this book, but I didn't love it. It wasn't as good as I was hoping it was gonna be, and honestly, I already pretty much forget everything about it. I don't think that I could even give you a synopsis. I know it has to do with fairies. The main character is a human who falls in love with a fairy. I forget how they met and pretty much everything else about it. I read two very similar fairy books back to back, and I definitely shouldn't have because I now forget which ones are which. Let me look it up real quick. Oh, okay, so this one is about a girl who has half a soul. She was cursed by a fairy as a young child, and she meets a wizard sorcerer character who's trying to help her get her soul back. It was fun. I did like it. It almost had Pride and Prejudice vibes for me. It just kind of hit similar plot beat. It even had like a Bingley character as well, which is fun. So I liked it for that, but overall, it just didn't really feel unique to me at all. It felt like every other fairy book from this time period that I've read, so I gave it a 3.5 star. And then right after that one, I read Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, which is the third and final book in this series, which I also gave a 3.5 star to for very similar reasons. It just didn't feel unique. I mean, I literally read a book right before this one that felt like the exact same book, and I'm kind of having a hard time separating the two in my head because they felt so similar. That was definitely my bad for reading them back to back. I probably shouldn't have done that, but I was in the mood for fairy books, and neither of these really scratched the itch, unfortunately. I did like this one, and I do love the series as a whole, but the first book was definitely the best, and they kind of got worse as they went along. This wasn't a bad book by any means. It just wasn't really that interesting to me. While reading it, I could really picture the author sitting down and mapping out this plot, and it just felt like these characters were doing all of these like really cool and interesting things just for the sake of having an interesting plot, you know? Like, I was really aware that I was reading a book. Very similar to how I felt about reading Watermoon, where I was not immersed in the story at all. I was just really aware that this was a plot and that these things were happening to make a interesting plot that kind of was trying to grab your attention, and instead I just felt like I was reading in the author's plot outline, you know what I mean? But I'm glad that I at least finished a series. That's always nice. Then I read The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, who is one of my favorite authors. This one's about a woman who, her family owns a funeral home, and she's been able to see ghosts her whole life. And when her father passes away, she goes back to her hometown, and her new boss, who's also the editor for the woman that she ghostwrites for, winds up on her doorstep as a ghost. And he has no idea how he died. This was a great book. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 star. It was a really solid read. It took me a weirdly long time to get really invested though. Normally, books about grief, oh, I live for books about grief. I love books that can make me cry. The topic of people losing a parent makes me sob. Even just talking about it, I could cry. So I should have been really emotionally invested in this book, and I got there eventually, but it really didn't grip me that much right away, which was kind of shocking to me. But I did eventually get really emotionally invested and ended up loving this book, and I'm glad to have checked off another book on this author's backlist. After that, I read The Rainfall Market, and I really didn't like this one. Again, similar to how I felt about Watermoon, this just felt like a whole bunch of what should have been really fun, interesting plot points where it felt like they were happening just for the sake of a plot. It just wasn't that interesting to me. I didn't love the characters. I liked the vibes. I thought the world was pretty cool, but nothing else really stood out for me, like, at all, and I ended up giving it a 2.5 star. Next up was Chlorine by Jade Song. This one I was hesitant to read because I'm really not a fan of YA contemporary books, but I'd heard amazing things about this book, so I had to at least give it a shot, and I ended up really enjoying it. It wasn't the best thing that I've ever read before, but it was very well written. I liked the characters. It was shocking and bloody and gruesome and really gross in some parts. I was also trying to push out of my comfort zone again. I normally can't handle any kind of body horror. It really freaks me out, and I knew that this book had that, and it definitely did. And it was really freaky, but I actually ended up really enjoying that part of it. I thought it was well done, and I'm proud of myself for being able to handle it. But this one is about a teenage girl who is on the high school swim team, and she is not doing well mentally. I don't really know how to talk about this book without spoiling it, but just read it. Look out trigger warnings, but just read it. It was good. I gave it 4 stars. And finally, on the last day of the month, I squeezed in Homebody by Rupi Kaur, and unfortunately I did not like this. I've had this book on my shelf for so long. I'm pretty sure I pre-ordered it, and yeah, this was bad. Like, just straight up, it was bad. I'm really sad that I didn't enjoy this because, like, I used to love this kind of poetry. The last time that I read this kind of poetry was when I was in my early 20s, and now that I'm a more mature adult, I can look back and recognize that at the time I thought that I was really deep and profound and I wanted to be mysterious so badly. I was not. But poetry like this really spoke to me at the time because that is also the same vibe. And reading it now that I am older, I've matured a lot, I've been in therapy for a good few years now, this feels very surface level to me. Hi, buddy. Hi, Tony. Yeah, this just feels really surface level. It just really feels like the author was trying to be deep and really say something meaningful, but just didn't have the emotional maturity to be able to actually delve into these topics in the way that she thought she did because she was so young when she wrote this. There were definitely some parts that were good to it. I really enjoy the poems about family and community, as well as like finding your purpose in life. Those ones were great. But anything to do with relationships and sex and all of that stuff was just like honestly really cringy and not a good time. So I gave it 2 stars and I'll probably be unhauling it, unfortunately. But those are all the books that I read in the month of April. That was a lot of books and a lot of talking. I'm very tired. I think I've been filming for like a solid hour now. This is going to be a bitch to edit. But let me know what you read in April or if you've read any of these books. Also let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear them. But in the meantime, thanks so much for watching and I will catch you guys later on.